In 1933, a janitor in Akron, Ohio, lost every cent when his bank collapsed overnight. By 1941, he owned his house outright and had zero debt. He did it using tricks his mother taught him during the worst economic collapse in American history. Number 11 on this list was so effective that banks lobbied Congress to make it harder. Number 4 was used by millions of families and called dangerous by the financial industry, not because it failed, but because it worked too well. These 25 money tricks kept families alive when the entire system turned against them. Then the banks and the credit card companies spent 90 years making sure you never learned a single one. Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because what you are about to learn might change how you think about every dollar in your wallet. Let us count down. Number 25, the envelope budget. Before spreadsheets, before apps, before anyone ever heard the word fintech, Depression-era families managed every dollar with paper envelopes and a pencil. On payday, the household cash went into labeled envelopes. Rent, groceries, coal, doctor, church. When an envelope was empty, spending in that category stopped. No exceptions. No borrowing from next week. No overdraft. The system was brutal in its honesty. You could see exactly what you had left by the thickness of the envelope. A family earning $18 a week in 1934 could stretch it across every obligation because every dollar had a name before it was spent. There was no mystery about where the money went. The envelopes told the truth, even when you did not want to hear it. Modern budgeting apps charge $12 a month to do what a stack of envelopes did for free. Banks prefer you use the app because apps connect to accounts, and accounts generate fees. The envelopes never charged a cent. Number 24, paying cash for everything. Depression families did not carry debt because they could not. Credit was gone. Banks were closed. What remained was the simplest financial principle ever discovered. If you do not have the money, you do not buy it. Families saved for months to buy a pair of shoes. They waited until they had the full price before purchasing a used stove. They walked past store windows without going inside because the cash was not in the envelope yet. This was not deprivation. It was discipline that prevented the debt spiral that had destroyed their neighbors. A $40 purchase on a modern credit card at 22% interest, if you pay only the minimum, costs $72 by the time it is settled. Your great-grandmother paid $40 and owed nothing to anyone. The financial industry calls this behavior financially unsophisticated. Your grandmother called it staying free. Number 23, buying day-old bread. Bakeries in every American city sold yesterday's bread at half price. Depression-era families lined up for it without shame because the bread was perfectly fine. A loaf that cost 9 cents fresh cost 4 or 5 cents a day later. For a family buying bread every other day, that savings added up to nearly $5 a year, which was real money when a man's weekly wage might be $15. Mothers revived stale loaves by wrapping them in a damp cloth and warming them in the oven. The bread came out soft and smelling fresh. No one at the table knew the difference. Today, Americans throw away 30% of the food they buy. Depression-era families threw away nothing because they remembered when there was nothing to throw away. Number 22, the Christmas Savings Club. Starting in January, families deposited a fixed amount every week into a special savings club at the local bank or credit union. 50 cents a week for 50 weeks returned $25 in November, enough to cover Christmas for the entire family. The money was untouchable until the payout date. No withdrawals, no exceptions. This forced discipline worked because it removed the option to spend. You could not raid the fund for a new hat in April. The money simply was not available. By the 1950s, nearly 12 million Americans participated in Christmas clubs. Banks eventually killed most of these programs because the accounts paid no interest and generated no fees. They wanted that money in checking accounts where overdraft charges could accumulate. The families who used Christmas clubs never went into debt for the holidays. That was the whole point. Number 21. Bartering skills for goods locally. When cash dried up during the Great Depression, families turned to the oldest economy on earth. A plumber fixed a farmer's pipes in exchange for a bushel of potatoes and a side of bacon. A seamstress altered dresses for the doctor's wife, and she received free checkups for her children. Entire communities operated on skill exchange when the dollar became scarce. No bank sat between people. No transaction fee was collected. No interest was charged. The local economy ran on trust and handshakes. Neighbors who might never have spoken discovered they needed each other. A carpenter in rural Indiana built a hen house for a widow in 1935, and she paid him in eggs every Saturday for 2 years. Both came out ahead. Both stayed fed. The barter economy terrified banks because it proved that communities could survive without financial institutions entirely. Number 20. Growing a victory garden. By 1943, 20 million American households were growing food in backyards, empty lots, and rooftops. But the practice started during the Depression, when families realized that a $2 investment in seeds could produce $50 worth of vegetables over a summer. Tomatoes, beans, squash, potatoes, and greens grew in every patch of available dirt. Families who gardened cut their grocery bills by a third or more. The produce was fresher than anything at the market, and it cost almost nothing after the initial seed purchase. Canning extended the harvest into winter. A single row of green beans could fill 30 jars. Those jars lined cellar shelves like a wall of insurance against the months when work disappeared. Children who grew up tending Depression gardens remembered the work for the rest of their lives, pulling weeds, hauling water, picking beans in the heat. But they also remembered the pride of eating something they had grown with their own hands. The modern grocery industry spends billions convincing you that growing food is a quaint hobby. During the Depression, it was the difference between eating and going hungry. A pair of men's work trousers cost about $1.50 in 1934. That was nearly a full day's wage for many workers, so when the knees wore through, nobody threw them away. Mothers cut patches from old flour sacks and stitched them over the thin spots. Socks with holes were darned with a wooden egg and a needle until the original fabric was more repair than sock. Children's clothes were handed down through 3 or 4 siblings, patched and let out at the seams as each child grew. A family of 5 could spend less than $20 a year on clothing by maintaining what they had. The average American now spends over $1,700 a year on clothes, much of it replacing items that could have been repaired. Your great-grandmother's sewing basket saved more money than most modern investment accounts. Number 18. Buying in bulk from farmer cooperatives. During the Depression, families who pooled their money could buy flour, sugar, and dried beans directly from wholesalers at a fraction of the retail price. Neighbors organized buying cooperatives where 10 families would combine orders and split a 100-pound sack of flour for $2.50 instead of paying 5 cents a pound at the store. The savings were dramatic. A family that spent $8 a month on dry goods at the grocer could cut that to $5 through cooperative buying. The logistics were simple. One family had the truck, another had the cellar space. Everyone chipped in their share on delivery day. No middleman took a cut. No store markup was applied. This is exactly how Costco works today, except Costco charges $65 a year for the privilege. Depression families did it with a handshake and a shared truck bed. First pattern break. Here is where the banks start to get uncomfortable. The financial habits on this list share one common thread. They all remove the bank from the transaction. Every dollar managed in an envelope is a dollar that does not sit in a checking account generating fees. Every barter exchange is a transaction that produces no interest for a lender. Every garden vegetable is a grocery bill that never appears on a credit card statement. The financial industry did not grow to its current size by helping Americans save money. It grew by inserting itself between Americans and their money, taking a small percentage every time cash changed hands. Depression families understood something that took the rest of us 90 years to relearn. The fewer institutions that touch your money, the more of it you keep. Number 17, the layaway system. Before credit cards existed, families used layaway to buy items they could not afford all at once. You picked the item, the store held it, and you made weekly payments until the full price was paid. Then you took it home, no interest, no credit check, no debt. A mother could put a winter coat on layaway in August, pay 50 cents a week for 12 weeks, and pick it up in November owing nothing. Her children had warm coats, and she had a clear conscience. The store got a guaranteed sale. The customer got the item without borrowing. Everyone won, except the lenders who made nothing from the arrangement. When credit cards became widespread in the 1970s and the 1980s, retailers quietly killed layaway programs because credit purchases generated interchange fees and interest income. They replaced a system that cost consumers nothing with one that costs Americans over $120 billion in credit card interest every year. Number 16, using the library as a free university. Depression-era families who could not afford school books, newspapers, or entertainment discovered that the public library provided all three for free. Children did homework with library books. Adults read trade manuals to learn new skills. Families gathered for free lectures and community events hosted in library meeting rooms. A man in Cleveland taught himself electrical wiring from library books in 1936 and started a repair business that supported his family for 30 years. The knowledge was free. The application was priceless. Public libraries still exist, still free, still stocked with books, audiobooks, movies, courses, and internet access. Americans now pay $15 a month for streaming services and $10 a month for audiobook subscriptions to access what the library offers at no charge. Your great-grandparents would find that baffling. Number 15, reusing everything. Depression families saved rubber bands, string, tinfoil, glass jars, paper bags, buttons, and zippers from worn-out clothes. Nothing was thrown away that could serve another purpose. Glass jars became drinking glasses, storage containers, and canning vessels. Flour sacks were sewn into dresses, curtains, and dish towels. Manufacturers actually started printing flour sacks with attractive patterns because they knew families were wearing them. Companies like Bemis Brothers Bag Company printed designs with flowers and plaids so mothers could choose patterns while buying flour. Old newspapers insulated walls. Worn sheets became cleaning rags. A single household could avoid dozens of purchases a year simply by repurposing what they already had. The savings were modest individually, but enormous over time. Modern Americans generate 4.4 pounds of trash per person per day. Depression families generated almost none, not because they were environmentalists, but because they could not afford to throw away anything that still had use left in it. Number 14, cooking from scratch exclusively. Convenience food barely existed during the Depression, and what little there was cost far more per serving than homemade. A can of soup cost 10 cents. A pot of homemade soup from bones and garden vegetables cost 2 cents and fed twice as many people. Bread from the bakery cost 9 cents. Bread baked at home cost 3 cents. Mothers who cooked everything from raw ingredients saved 40 to 60% on food costs compared to families who bought prepared foods. The time investment was significant, but time was the one resource unemployed families had in abundance. What they produced was fresher, more nutritious, and dramatically cheaper. The processed food industry that exploded after World War II was built on convincing Americans that their time was too valuable to cook. What they actually meant was that your time was too valuable to save money. Number 13, never buying on impulse. Depression families planned every purchase days or weeks in advance. A trip to the store meant a written list and nothing else. Children were not given coins for candy. Wives did not browse the department store. Husbands did not stop at the hardware store to look around. Every dollar spent was a dollar that had been discussed, weighed against alternatives, and agreed upon before it left the house. This was not miserliness. It was survival arithmetic. A family that leaked 50 cents a week on unplanned purchases lost $26 a year, enough to buy a month's worth of groceries. Modern retail science is built entirely on breaking this discipline. Store layouts, product placement, checkout displays, flash sales, limited time offers. Every strategy is designed to make you buy something you did not intend to buy when you walked in. Depression families were immune to all of it because they never walked in without a plan. Number 12. Paying bills early or on time without exception. A late payment in the 1930s did not just mean a fee. It meant a mark on your reputation in a community where your name was your credit score. Families prioritized bills above almost everything else because falling behind meant losing the trust of the grocer who extended store credit, the landlord who might wait an extra week, the doctor who treated your child before you could pay. On-time payment was not a financial strategy. It was social survival. Today, late fees generate $12 billion a year for credit card companies alone. The entire penalty fee structure of modern banking depends on Americans paying late. Your great-grandmother never paid a late fee in her life because she understood that the first bill you skip is the one that starts the avalanche. Second pattern break. Here is what the credit industry does not want you to connect. Every trick on this list works. Present tense. The envelope budget still eliminates overspending. Paying cash still prevents debt. Buying in bulk still cuts grocery bills. Growing food still reduces expenses. Repairing clothes still saves money. None of these strategies expired. None of them stopped functioning. They were not replaced by something better. They were replaced by something more profitable for someone else. The shift from Depression-era money management to modern consumer finance was not progress. It was a business model. And the product being sold was your future income, sliced into monthly payments and interest charges and fees that compound while you sleep. The Depression generation understood debt the way a drowning man understands water. They had felt it close over their heads. They spent the rest of their lives making sure it never happened again. We forgot their fear and inherited their debt. Number 11. Keeping cash reserves at home. During the Depression, families kept emergency cash hidden in the house, coffee cans buried in the yard, bills folded inside books, coins sewn into mattress hems. This was not paranoia. It was experience. Between 1930 and 1933, more than 9,000 American banks failed, and depositors lost approximately $1.3 billion in savings, which would be nearly $30 billion today. Families who kept cash at home could still buy food when their neighbors' accounts were frozen. The banking industry spent the next several decades rebuilding trust and convincing Americans that keeping cash at home was foolish and dangerous. FDIC insurance helped, but the instinct to keep some money outside the system, where no institution could freeze it, where no bank holiday could lock you out, that instinct was earned through genuine suffering. Your great-grandmother kept a roll of bills in her flour canister, not because she did not understand banking, but because she understood it perfectly. Number 10. Negotiating every price. Fixed pricing is a modern invention. During the Depression, almost everything was negotiable. Rent, groceries, medical bills, repair work, even utility payments could be discussed, reduced, or restructured through a direct conversation. A tenant who offered to paint the hallway might get a month's rent reduced. A customer who bought damaged goods at the grocer accepted a lower price, and the store avoided a total loss. Both parties benefited. This was not haggling. It was pragmatic cooperation between people who were all struggling. Today, Americans assume that every price is final, that the number on the tag is the number you pay. It almost never is. Medical bills can be negotiated. Rent can be discussed. Service contracts can be reduced. Credit card interest rates can be lowered with a phone call. The Depression generation knew this because they had no choice but to ask. We stopped asking because prosperity made us too polite or too embarrassed to try. Number 9, insulating the house with free materials. Heating a house during a Depression winter could consume a quarter of a family's income. Families fought back by stuffing newspaper into wall cavities, hanging heavy blankets over doorways, and sealing window frames with strips of old fabric and paste. Some packed straw between exterior and interior walls. Others tacked up cardboard as a wind barrier. The materials cost nothing, and the labor was done on weekends. The savings on coal or wood could amount to $10 or more across a winter, a fortune when wages hovered around $15 a week. Some families hung wet quilts over windows at night, trapping an insulating layer of still air between the fabric and the glass. Others pasted old wallpaper over interior walls to add another barrier against the cold. Every crack sealed was money saved. Modern weatherization programs use the same basic principle with better materials, yet millions of Americans still heat drafty houses without sealing obvious gaps. Your great-grandfather would have walked through your house once, shaken his head, and spent Saturday morning fixing every draft for free. Number 8, sharing housing costs. During the Depression, doubling up was not a last resort. It was common sense. Families took in boarders, rented spare rooms, or moved in with relatives to split the cost of rent, heat, and food. A household that cost $30 a month for one family cost $15 each for two. The arrangement worked because everyone understood the math. Pride was a luxury that came after survival. Widows rented rooms to single working men. Young married couples lived with parents for years. Brothers and sisters who had not spoken in a decade moved under the same roof because the arithmetic demanded it. Entire extended families shared a single house, pooling income and dividing expenses until everyone could stand on their own. The modern real estate industry pushes homeownership as an individual achievement. The Depression generation understood it as a shared burden, lighter when carried together. Number 7, making your own cleaning products. Commercial cleaning products were an expense that families during the Depression eliminated entirely. White vinegar cleaned glass and countertops. Baking soda scrubbed sinks and pots. Lye soap made at home from saved cooking grease, and lye washed clothes, floors, and dishes. A year's worth of homemade cleaning supplies cost less than $1. A single bottle of brand-name cleaner costs $4 today and lasts a month. The chemical formulations are more complex, but the cleaning power of vinegar and baking soda has not changed since your great-grandmother used them. What changed was the advertising. Companies like Procter & Gamble spent millions convincing Americans that homemade cleaners were inferior and unsanitary. They were neither. They were just unprofitable. Number 6, walking instead of driving. Gasoline cost about 18 cents a gallon during the Depression, but for families earning $15 a week, every gallon mattered. Many families parked their cars entirely, letting them sit on blocks in the driveway to save on gas, oil, tires, and insurance. They walked to the store. Children walked to school. Men walked to work if the job was within a few miles. The savings extended beyond fuel. Cars that sat unused did not need repairs, registration, or new tires. A family that eliminated car expenses could save $5 to $8 a month, a staggering amount when rent might be $20. Families who walked also stayed healthier, spent more time talking to neighbors, and discovered shortcuts through their own towns that drivers never noticed. The average American now spends over $12,000 a year on transportation. Depression families knew that the cheapest vehicle ever invented was a pair of shoes that had already been paid for. Third pattern break. Here is the trick the financial industry played on an entire generation. After the war, when prosperity returned, banks and lenders and retailers all delivered the same message. You deserve this. You have earned it. Do not live like your parents lived. That message was not generosity. It was marketing. Every habit the Depression generation had built, the saving, the repairing, the reusing, the refusing to carry debt, every single one of those habits was an obstacle to the consumer economy that corporations wanted to build. So they rebranded frugality as poverty. They made saving look like fear. They made debt look like confidence. And within a single generation, the most financially disciplined population in American history raised children who carried credit card balances and threw away clothes after one season. The banks did not just want you to forget these tricks, they needed you to forget them. Their entire business model depended on it. Number 5, buying used before buying new. Depression-era families furnished homes, clothed children, and equipped kitchens almost entirely from second-hand sources. Church rummage sales, estate auctions, and neighborhood swaps provided everything from winter coats to cast-iron skillets, all at a fraction of retail. A used kitchen table that cost 50 cents at an auction would have cost $8 new. The stigma of buying used did not exist because everyone was doing it. Quality items, especially furniture and tools, lasted decades and often outlasted their newer replacements. Today, the resale market generates $50 billion a year in the United States, driven by thrift stores and online platforms. Depression-era families were doing the same thing 90 years ago without the app. They just called it being sensible. Number 4, avoiding debt as if it were disease. This was not a strategy. It was a commandment. Depression-era families treated debt the way they treated illness, something to be avoided entirely and eliminated immediately if contracted. They did not finance furniture. They did not borrow for vacations. They did not carry balances. If the money was not in hand, the purchase did not happen. This single principle, applied ruthlessly across an entire generation, kept millions of families solvent through the worst economic disaster in modern history. Consumer debt in the United States now exceeds $17 trillion. The average American household carries over $7,000 in credit card debt alone. The Depression generation carried zero, not because they did not want things, but because they understood that owing money meant someone else owned a piece of your future. Banks have spent 90 years normalizing debt, calling it leverage, calling it building credit, calling it smart money management. Your great-grandmother called it a trap. She was right. Number 3, saving before spending. The Depression generation did not save what was left after spending. They spent what was left after saving. The order mattered. When the paycheck came in, the first money went into savings. Rent and necessities came next. Everything else, the wants, the nice-to-haves, the small pleasures, came last, if there was anything left at all. This inversion of priorities meant that savings grew steadily, even on tiny incomes. A family that saved just $1 a week accumulated $52 a year, enough to cover an emergency, replace a broken appliance, or survive a month without work. That $52 was the difference between weathering a crisis and being destroyed by one. Modern financial advice says the same thing: pay yourself first, but the phrase has been repeated so often it lost its teeth. The Depression generation did not need a slogan. They had the memory of watching their parents lose everything. That memory was more motivating than any financial planner could ever be. Number 2, keeping a price book. Grandmothers kept small notebooks in their purses where they recorded the price of every staple at every store they visited. Flour at the A&P, sugar at the corner market, lard at the butcher. Over weeks, the notebook revealed patterns. Which store was cheapest for which item on which day? Shopping became strategic rather than convenient. A woman who tracked prices could save 15 to 20% on groceries simply by buying each item where it cost least. The notebook cost a nickel. The savings paid for themselves in a single trip. Modern coupon apps and price comparison websites do the same thing, but they also track your data, sell your shopping habits to advertisers, and push sponsored products into your results. The price book in your grandmother's purse did none of that. It just saved money, quietly and completely, without selling you anything in return. Number 1. Teaching children about money before they could read. The most powerful financial trick the Depression generation ever used was not a budgeting method or a saving strategy. It was education. Children in Depression households learned about money the way they learned about weather, by living inside it. They watched their mothers count coins at the kitchen table. They watched their fathers negotiate with the landlord. They understood, before they ever entered a classroom, that money was finite, that choices had consequences, and that security came not from earning more, but from needing less. These children grew up to become the most disciplined savers, the most reluctant borrowers, and the most financially resilient generation in American history. And then they made a mistake. They wanted their own children to have it easier, so they shielded them from the conversations, hid the struggles, and let prosperity do the teaching instead. Prosperity taught the opposite lesson. It taught that money was abundant, that debt was normal, and that tomorrow would always take care of itself. The banks loved that lesson. They built an empire on it. And 2 generations later, Americans carry more debt than any population in human history, while the tricks that could free them sit forgotten in the memory of grandparents who are no longer here to remind us. Here is my challenge. Try one of these this week. The envelope budget, the price book, paying cash for a purchase you were going to put on a card, just one. Then come back and tell me what happened. Tell me if your grandmother was wrong. I tried the envelopes for 30 days and found $340 I'd been losing every month to purchases I could not even remember making. These were not poverty tricks, they were freedom tricks. And every bank in America hopes you never figure that out. Drop which one you are going to try in the comments. I want to know if the cash-only method scares more people than the price book, because these were not just money habits. They were a way of life the financial industry spent 90 years burying. Your great-grandparents knew. Now you know too.